What do you tell then founders if you're advising earlier stage founders? Because there's an alluring aspect to taking venture dollars, right? There's a little ego boost to some extent. But then also, like, in some cases you need it because you're making these investments. You got to hire these expensive engineers and salespeople. And that's the only way your company's, maybe, at least you may imagine, the only way it will take off.
Again, I think it's a personal decision, but I think a lot of founders don't really understand what they're signing up for, to be honest. And, you shouldn't take even it's funny, they're called safes because it feels safe to go raise, a couple $1 million in these notes and have some cash in the bank to move you along. But, look, the most optimal position in my mind as a business owner is to own 100% of the business. And that's the ideal. You don't have partners is ideal. Ideally, you don't have co-founders. You just don't have countering forces that could be working against you and just making your life harder. At least that's from my, my experience kind of looking in hindsight is this just complicates things. And, maybe 1 out of 10 hits the gold rush and it's a rocket ship. But in so many other cases, it just makes the founders and the management team just miserable. Choose one path.
I mean, I tend to agree, right? I don't have a co-founder for Chore. We're bootstraps, but it took me 3 companies, this is my 4th, to figure that out. How does that work? I mean, a lot of people would say, maybe Andrew as well, I've read his book, right? That having a partner to do this stuff makes it so much easier and better. If you have the right partner, you can go that much faster because you're in it together and you're focused on it in a really hard, strong way. And that can more than double your output, right? 2 + 2 doesn't actually equal 4. If it's 2 top tier founders who are both in it, it probably equals 8 or something. What would be the alternative to that? Where it's okay, yeah, if you're on your own, look, you and I both know this. It's hard I'm CEO, it's hard being up here, where people are here's this issue. And I'm shit, I just got to decide. There's no one else. And that's freeing, but it also puts a lot of extra pressure there.
The co-founder marriage in Silicon Valley was really because the business guy who knew how to scale the business and the technical guy who knew how to write the code. That was the partnership that had to come together to make that work. And they support each other and all that through that journey. And I think just we're in a day and age today where you don't need a technical co-founder. You can hire, agencies, you can hire individual freelancers, you can, vibe code, an MVP. So I think there's just solutions that didn't exist 3-5 years ago. The logic was that you should have a co-founder. I think if you're a type of person who's not driven, is not going to wake up every day and go work at this problem, then maybe you need somebody to keep you honest.
Well, then you probably should be an entrepreneur in general, if that's the case. If you're not driven in general, then don't go be an entrepreneur, at least in a high tech space where growth is somewhat expected.
Just to think what is the most optimal number of employees in a business? It's 0, right? You have no payroll costs. The most optimal amount of equity ownership you want as an entrepreneur is 100%. So when you add co-founders, when you add investors, and it just dilutes you over time, yeah, maybe you'll grow faster and maybe you'll get to a bigger overall enterprise value in time, but you also just have to pay attention to that dilution. That's kind of
equity is an interesting one. What's your opinion about giving equity away to the team, right? If you're saying, hey, 100% is ideal, what about giving equity to the team who's there with you on this journey, trying to build this company? It's still in giving. If you own 90%, I think that's still pretty good if you give 10% away to your team. But what is your thesis there? And then I want to dive into culture a little bit too, because you built this great culture at Dribble.
No, I think it's fair. If people want stock options, I think it's good to have a pool and have people feel invested as owners in the business. But in my experience across multiple startups for many, many years, is that people just don't understand stock options and they don't really understand the mechanics of it.
I don't understand. You mean they don't understand the technical aspects of what it is, or they don't understand the value prop of it? So
they don't understand okay, what does it mean to have X amount of share? They don't even know how to ask the right questions, right? So I think giving it away as an incentive, this concept was really invented as a way to compress salaries and give an alternative compensation. And so I think if an employee wants stock options, it needs to be framed within that type of math. of like, okay, well, like if you want this crazy 6-figure salary and you want this, this equity package, like here's like the sum of those two parts, and let's talk about that number.